sometime before June, we're going to see the Islanders play the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round, and we'll go over. I'll just put up the highlight, recapping the games. In the first game, the Islanders won 4-3 with Anders Lee getting power play goal with 2:44 remaining. In the second game versus the Penguins, they lost in shootout. Barzal got his 5th of the season. He was great in that game. So was Cizikas at Pajot. Malkin, I believe it deflected off a stick with 18 seconds left to tie it. I was actually watching that one live. Islanders went down 4-1. Brock Nelson had a goal. Sidney Crosby, you can see all those numbers right there. Another loss to the Penguins is Chris Letang had a pair of goals. Penguins winning in overtime, and Chris Letang an overtime winner. Then Ilya Sorokin got the only shutout in the series for either team. A lot of the same names in this series. It happens all the time. Barzal had his 10th goal of the season. 6-3 loss to the Penguins. They were down 5-0. And if I recall correctly, Anthony said they hit the post down 5-3 on the power play with a minute remaining?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. The next game, the Penguins said, we'll play your game, Islanders. Beat them 2-1. 2 goals by third and fourth liners. And it leads us to this. Penguins are 2-4-2 versus, the Islanders are 2-4-2 versus the Penguins. Anthony, your first word and your first thoughts on this series.
My first thoughts are, I look back to 2018, 2019. Penguins have the same core in place. Crosby, Malkin, Rust, Gensel, Tang. Murray for Jarry is a toss up to me. Yeah, their defense has improved. They don't have traffic cones like Jack Johnson and Gun Branson. They have CC and Matheson. So not really upgrades, but not make a huge difference. And the Islanders essentially have the same team as they did in 18-19. Swap out Valtteri Filppula for Oliver Wahlstrom, Tom Kunak for Kyle Palmieri, Leonard for Varlarmov. So the teams are pretty similar to what they were 2 years ago, and the Islanders swept them. I'm not expecting a sweep, as saw my prediction. I said Islanders in 6, and also that series Pelech and Pullock held Crosby to 1 point, which was tremendous. You can't expect that to happen again, and I don't. But when you look at this season series, we just recap. One of those games for the Penguins was a shootout. One game they won in overtime. So while they did take the season series, a couple of bounces here and there could have gone the other way. So again, just like I said, I wasn't scared of the Capitals. I'm not scared of this Penguins team. I think if you compare these teams, goaltending goes to the Islanders, Varlamov over Jarry. Their defense, depending on what happens with Vegas tonight, there's still a chance the Islanders win the Jennings Trophy. So overall, their defense is better than Pittsburgh's. The only thing Pittsburgh has going for them right now is that they're scoring more goals than the Islanders. So if the Islanders can play their typical Islander-style hockey, solid D, solid goaltending, and then just get some of their offense back, I think they could take care of Pittsburgh in this series. So, those kind of like my first thoughts. I think that the Islanders have a lot of playoff experience they gained over the last couple of years. I think the trip to the conference finals taught them a lot about their growth overall as a team. And also, if you look, Pittsburgh's been bad the last 3 times they made it to the dance. So, but again, still a dangerous team. When you have Crosby and Malkin, they're capable of winning a series. But the Islanders are going to put Pelech and Pullock on that top line again. So I'm excited for this series to start. I really am. I know we'll get into other topics a little later on, like my malign players and matchups. But overall, those kind of my first thoughts, and I'm excited to get this going. I think it's going to be Sunday. I think it's either going to be a 12 o'clock or a 3 o'clock start, but nothing's been confirmed yet. So,
Phil, your first thoughts on this, and then we're going to start unpacking the stats.
I think this is actually a really good matchup for the Islanders. I don't think they wanted to play a team like Washington right now because although, like I said, a couple of years ago when they played, or last year when they played in the playoffs, they really kind of skated circles around Washington. I think Washington is a better team right now than they were back then. They're a bigger, heavier, more physical matchups in Washington. But the Islanders and Pittsburgh are, I think they're pretty evenly matched. I think the Islanders have the lesser offense. They might be a little more balanced there, but the offense is definitely in favor of Pittsburgh. For some reason, like I said in the past, they seem to be a better offensive team. Malkin can just have two guys on each wing, or a guy on each wing, that will really kind of just be like, Crosby or Malkin says jump, and the wingers say how high. It's not like Kessel or anyone else that's come along and that's tried to control the play. It's like in basketball having like a LeBron James and a James Harden on the floor at the same time. Like, the guys need the ball. They both need the ball to make things work. So those two can make any line that they're on work. I got to give credit to Pittsburgh's defense because, Mark, you can pat yourself on the back. We all know you want to do that. But, Pittsburgh's defense has been the real MVP for them this season. They've been better than I've ever expected. I still think the Islanders have a pretty decisive edge over them defensively because of not only their system, but I think their unit is a better defensive unit, even though it doesn't give them the offense that Pittsburgh's defense can give them, between guys like Letang, Marino, and maybe even Pierre-Olivier Joseph can give them a lot of offense from the back end, move the puck well. But the key in this series is going to be goaltending. It's going to be goaltending. Goaltending always wins in the playoffs. I've always said that. So in this case, the Islanders have two better goaltenders, and it's a clear-cut advantage for the Islanders. Like, we're talking, if I'm rating the Islanders goaltending on a 1 out of 10 scale, I'm giving it at least an 8. Pittsburgh's, I'm giving it a 5. And I'm being generous there with 5. I don't trust DeSmith. I don't trust Jari. I don't trust them in the playoffs, especially against a team that's as well-structured and works as a well-oiled machine like the Islanders do. So I like this matchup for the Islanders. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins are really going to be in for it with them. I think the Islanders are coming out on top in this one.
Well, we'll get to all of our predictions on that in a minute, and also unpacking a lot more. If you saw me when I put it on the Chirons just before, two things jump out at me. Like, when you look at guys this season, like Matt Barzal has a plus 15 rating on the season. He is a -6 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, by far his worst. And 3 goals, 3 assists, those are still good numbers. I mean, it's under a point a game, but still, that's not bad. And then you go to Sidney Crosby, who is over a point a game against the Islanders, and has a plus 5. That jumped out at me. The second in the NHL for goals, I was a little bit alarmed when the Penguins were 155th. Sorry, not 155th, idiot. Okay. Yeah, they're 16th in goals with 155. But unpacking those goaltending numbers before we get to some of the other categories that we had on this. Semyon Varlarmov on the season. These are his numbers. They're Vezina Trophy worthy numbers. He deserves to be nominated if he's going to be there. When I was doing the stat packs on these, this is the number that jumped out at me. And that's alarming. He's 1-3-2 with a 2.86 goals against and a sub 0.9 save percentage. He only has worse numbers against one team. Anybody want to guess?
Flyers.
Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So I'm like, I think he has a 0.67. I should have actually wrote that down.
Oof, side large.
Tristan Jarry, though, and you're right about this. If you're going by the eye test, I'm trusting the Islanders goaltenders more. Tristan Jarry this season, injury riddled as usual. He had 37 games. I don't know why I had to do the math. They're right in front of me. 2.75 goals against, and then versus the Islanders, those numbers get better. 5-1, 2.4, and that Casey DeSmith is the same thing. So that sort of leads to, and Anthony's got some news on Varlamov he's about to share with us, that should Sorokin play in this series?
So
Anthony.
yeah, I was telling Mark, Filk, I don't know if you saw or their last game of the year against Boston when they lost in overtime. It was 2-2 game at the end of the second, and start of the third. Sorokin led the team out of the tunnel and was in goal for the Islanders in the third period. So they were talking about it, when it started, and they showed like Varlarmov at the end of the second period, like he got off last. He was standing by the bench with the trainer, and he was just kind of like moving his leg around, skating. Obviously you can't hear what they're saying, and then he skated off. But it didn't look like anything. But then they said that he was out for the rest of the game. Corey Schneider actually got his shit on and dressed as the backup. Turned out that after the game, Trotz said that Varlarmov had I think, did he say groin or hip? Groin or hand? I think it was groin. A small groin issue. And that he said that if it was a playoff game, Varlarmov could have stayed in. And he kind of, downplayed it and said it was nothing, and everyone moved on. But earlier today, Andrew Gross was tweeted out that the Islanders' main group, Varlarmov wasn't on the ice, and it was just Schneider and Sorokin on the ice. So Varlarmov's still not skating. Nothing to be alarmed about, because again, they could just be giving him some time and taking him along slow. But I will say, if come Friday, he's still not practicing. At that point, you're talking a long way out without playing. I think at that point you got to start Sorokin for game one if Varlarmov's not on the ice by Friday. So just keep an eye on that. But even if it does happen, John, you referenced both Islanders goalies. I give him the nod over Pittsburgh. Sorokin shut out the Penguins. He had that one bad game other than the Ranger game against Pittsburgh. So I'm not really concerned about that. I'll feel comfortable if Sorokin's in goal in game one, but just keep an eye on that. I thought it was interesting, but I still expect Varlarmov to start unless the Islanders say otherwise. But I expect him to be in goal. Just again, it's just something to watch out for. In the next couple of days.
Well, here's a question I got for you, and Anthony, we'll start right here, because usually I look at Barry Trotz and say the Islanders have the edge in coaching, but Mike Sullivan has got 2 Stanley Cups and has beaten
Sorry, Mark,
Barry
I was
Trotz.
waiting for your next thing or what you were.
Which one? Ant?
Yeah, Mike Sullivan's a good coach, but
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, all right. Yeah. I thought you said something like you couldn't hear me.
Oh, no. No. It's like Sullivan beaten Trotz twice, and Trotz beat him the last matchup, the sweep of the Islanders had. Is it really an edge that the Islanders have in coaching right now?
Yeah, I still give a slight edge to Trotz. I mean, he's one of the most winningest coaches of all time. He's constantly adjusting mid-game. He's a smart guy. He knows when to take timeouts, when to switch things up. Aside from Palmieri on the top line, but no, yeah, I think Trotz has the slight advantage over Pittsburgh in coaching. I think that's one of the stronger things the Islanders have going for him is Trotz, and he always has them ready to play, fires them up, and I expect nothing different come Sunday or whenever this series starts.
I would have to say the same thing. Normally, 90 to 95% of the time, my stance. Trotz is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to be considered one of the best of all time when it's all said and done.
Oh yeah.
But, if there's anybody that could say that he knows how to plan for Barry Trotz and what Barry Trotz is going to bring, it is Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan has beaten. Mike Sullivan's Penguins have beaten Barry Trotz's Capitals twice. Mike Sullivan's Penguins haven't beaten Barry Trotz's Islanders. That's the difference here. So you're looking at someone like Sullivan and how he's going to game plan for a different team that plays a slightly different style, because you've got to remember the Capitals play differently because they had the weapons to play differently from the Islanders. The Islanders play an even stricter defensive game because they just simply don't have the weapons to play on that type of hockey that Washington played under Trotz. But yeah, Sullivan knows a lot of Barry Trotz's tricks and how his systems work and how you have to play against them and how to make adjustments against him mid-game. But I'm still giving Barry Trotz the edge here. So, Mike Sullivan also, got to remember when Sullivan's Penguins beat Trotz's Capitals, those were better teams. The Pittsburgh Penguins that he had in those 2 years in 16 and 17 were two of the deepest teams in Pittsburgh Penguins history.
Even
especially
18.
Team winner. So I'm still giving the edge to Trotz. I don't think it's a massive edge, but it's still enough to the point where I'm convinced that Barry Trotz has the edge here.
Well, John, we're going to have to go with what your answers are with these in a second, because we were hoping to get you on and we got you on. But you're going to have to give your answers without graphics or just off the top of your head. Anthony, what is the under the radar player that you're looking at and think it could be a real contributor to this series?
I think it's Oliver Wahlstrom. He has 12 goals this year. In the last week or so, he started to get hot again. And this is a guy, if he gets going, it's just going to give the Islanders that secondary scoring that they could really need, push him over the edge. And, he's ever since his, end of his college career and then, until he made it full-time in the NHL, people were kind of about him. But this year, he really worked his ass off. I remember Trotz said he came into this training camp slimmer as he was as opposed to in the bubble. He was stronger. He got faster, and he's always had his shot. I mean, the other night against Boston, boys, 4-on-4, Barzal kind of cycled around to create some space. He gave it to Wahlstrom in that Ovi spot, and he beat Rask, and it was clean. He just beat Rask clean with his shot that he had. His release and shot is really, really good. So the Islanders are going to look for him on that power play to get him the puck, isolate him, and let him tee off. But if he could continue having his nose to the net here, it's going to be a real big boost to the Islanders. And Mark, the other name I texted you in this was the trio, the identity line: Cizikas, Martin, Clutterbuck. These guys come playoff time, they raise their game even more, especially at home. But they're like hounds on the puck. They throw hits, they play hard, they get underneath the other team's skin. They make the defensemen, question turning their head when they skate back to get the puck because they know they're going to get hit, and they bring a lot of energy to the bench. And not only that, but they could score. Cizikas scored a decent amount this year. Matt Martin chipped in at seven goals or so. So they also could score when they start cycling the puck down low. So sometimes teams have a tough time answering their line, and I think if they're really playing their game, they can really be a problem for Pittsburgh. So those are kind of my under the radar to watch for the Islanders here as we get going.
My under the radar player for the Penguins is Jared McCann. He's got a bomb of a shot that he used. You saw it in the Ranger game where they blew out the Penguins, but at least that's a nice memory I have right there of hockey season. But McCann's been playing alongside Jeff Carter, and Carter's been exploding in the last week for the Penguins. More on him in a moment. Again, by the way, John Pekowski, who did Jeff Carter go right before the 2003 NHL draft? Yeah, Hugh Jessamine.
Right before Hugh Jessamine.
Right before Hugh Jessamine. But I think McCann's going to be a physical force, and I think he's going to chip in some offense. So look out for him. John, who do you got for an under-the-radar player?
I'm going to pick two guys, one from each team. From Pittsburgh, I'm going to say Brandon Tanev, because Anthony talked about the identity line for the Islanders before. Brandon Tanev is going to be that guy that's going to try to get under the Islanders' skin, and he's going to throw big hits. He's going to be all over the place. He's going to hit everything that moves. He can put up some points. I mean, he's one of those guys that's like, you had a better non-scummy version of Matt Cook, you would have Brandon Tanev. And that's Brendan Tanev is to me. He's a guy that can give you points. He's a guy that can go out there, and I mean, if he has to fight somebody, he would probably fight somebody. But he's going to be a physical presence, and he's going to be somebody that's really going to cause a lot of havoc for the Penguins. So the Penguins are, I think, better prepared this time around to play the Islanders than they were 2 years ago when they had guys like Nick Bjugstad who really couldn't skate all that well, and the Islanders skated circles around them. So someone like Brandon Tanev is really going to help them. For the Islanders, I would say Brock Nelson, because center depth wins a lot of times. If you do the pecking order, you go goalie and then you go center, and center depth wins in the playoffs. I mean, Pittsburgh is stacked down the middle with Crosby, Malkin, and Carter. That's their big three. But the Islanders have Barzal, Nelson, and Pajot, or Zajac, whoever you want to put there, whatever the case may be. But Brock Nelson's really, I think, the most pivotal center for the Islanders, because he has to match up against one of either Crosby or Malkin. He's going to be relied upon to play a solid defensive game, and they're going to need goals from him like they got in that 2019 series. So I think Brock Nelson might be the single most important player on that team right now.
Now, some players have been struggling coming into the playoffs, and that's why I always have this category every single series. Who, Anthony, is your most maligned player that you're looking at and seeing whether or not they could turn the game around?
I know I kind of joked with you. I said Uncle Leo when I texted you, because I think he is going to be in the lineup, because Trotz just trusts him. He trusts them, and he plays them on the line of Barzal and Eberle. He feels that he gives them time and space, and he goes to the corners and he hustles. But maligned, Kyle Palmieri, only because since they brought him in, he has gotten better the last couple of games. He scored actually a pretty nice goal the other night against New Jersey, and he went to the dirty areas and he got into some scrums and stuff. So hopefully he's waking up. But Kyle Palmieri scoring like he has, if he get back to the level, like I said, he's been a 25-plus guy, pretty consistent in the last 5 years. So if he could start getting back to his game and scoring, I mean, that would be gravy for the Islanders, because that's just another guy, just like Sarah Wallstrom, that could chip in and score. So Kyle Palmieri, he really needs to get going. He needs to come up on the power play when the Islanders get opportunities, and he needs to bring the same energy level he did the last couple of games. But yeah, that would be a really, really big coup for the Islanders if he gets going here.
It is a rarity that I ever get to put this player in the term most maligned player or slumping player, whichever one you want to go. But it's got to be Evgeny Malkin for the Penguins. It's, by the way, I'm also exclusively doing Penguins, so that way Anthony has more time to talk about Islanders. But it's like Evgeny Malkin, you look at his numbers, 28 points a season, a -4 rating, 33 games. So he's under a point a game. He's been injured, but it's also like he can just suddenly just break out and have a hat trick. That's how much talent this guy has. I mean, he's already a consummate trophy winner. I mean, and I'm putting him in this category. I can't believe I'm even putting him in this category. Phil, who do you have for a slumping guy that you're going to look at?
You took my pick. Yeah, that was going to be.
That's why I had to get mine in first.
It just, I don't know what else there is to say about Evgeny Malkin. I mean, he's generational talent. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. We've all seen what either him or Sidney Crosby can do when the other is out. I mean, we know how they step up, and they both have incredible playoff resumes as well. So, I mean, if there's any time for Evgeny Malkin to get off the schneid, it's going to be now, because if he doesn't, the Islanders are going to have an easier series than a 6-game victory over the Penguins. They're going to be out in 4 or 5 if Evgeny Malkin can't get himself going. And like I said, Brock Nelson was the key player to watch for the Islanders for me, that under-the-radar player. And I think chances are he might end up going against Evgeny Malkin. So that's going to be your head-to-head center matchup right there, matchup number 2, because you're probably looking at Crosby versus Barzal, which hasn't seemed to go well for Barzal this season. But, I mean, if Brock Nelson can have his way with Evgeny Malkin and really get into his head and get him off his game, then Malkin starts taking those stupid, dirty penalties that he tends to take over time. The Islanders get on a power play, they get a couple of goals there, or they get ahead in a game, they can start clamping down and squeezing real tight on that lead, and there goes that series quicker than you can say Wallstrom. I don't know. I didn't know what to say there, but I mean, it's seriously, if Malkin isn't there and he gets out of his head like Kovalchuk did against the Rangers in 2007, then Lord knows what happens.
Now,
Mark, before you move on, I just want to add, I'm glad John brought that up about Malkin. I've noticed over his career, if there's a player or players that really stick on him and stifle him and play hard on him, he turns into a little cheap baby. Honestly, like John said, he gives whacks, he takes stupid penalties. Sometimes he becomes a little lazy, disinterested. So yeah, absolutely. The Islanders need to get in his head, play hard on him, make him take retaliatory penalties. That's the best thing they could do.
Well, that's 2008 Paul Mara right there, the slew foot in Game 4 at the end of the Game 4 against the Rangers. So
yeah. All right, and to our, I think this is probably our most important breakdown right here. The matchup that you're going to watch, Anthony.
I think it's clearly, Pelech and Pullock versus Crosby's line, part 2. They did an absolutely phenomenal job in 18-19. When you hold Crosby to 1 point, and I think that point was just an assist, a generational player like that, it was incredible Herculean effort by them. And, again, I'm not expecting it to happen again, but it's definitely going to be Trotz's go-to. He's going to have them out there every time Crosby's on the ice the best he can, especially at home. On the road, it'll be a little harder, but Crosby's going to be seeing a lot of them. Crosby's not a small guy by any means, but Pelech and Pullock are two bigger, taller guys. They're going to play the body on him. Pelech's great with his stick. He's going to stick to him like glue. So if they can play even, 3/4 of those good as way they did against him the first time around, that'll be good news for the Islanders. So that's going to be really important. Forward line, he's going to try to match Pajot and Cizikas up against Crosby's line as much as he can. But the Pelech and Pullock pair is going to be the line that pair that plays against him, as many times as Trotz can get him out there. So
I happen to think my matchup, I kept on staring at the line combinations yesterday, and I'm looking at Pelech and Pullock versus Crosby. Green and who's Green's guy again?
Say that again? Oh, Dobson.
Who? Dobson, okay. Green and Dobson probably are going to go against the Malkin unit, which leads me to, it's got to be Jeff Carter's line versus Leddy and Mayfield. And that they got to grind them out. Mayfield is a capable defenseman defensively. Leddy's got his holes. So they got to actually work them, work their size on them, because I believe that line is McCann and Duweedle, and Ruido. Thank you. Forgot the guy's name. Wonderful hockey journalist. Always have your notes with you whenever you're doing everything. So it's just that line, and I was saying before, Carter 9 goals in his 14 games with Pittsburgh. They've been phenomenal. So if Pittsburgh wants to win, they're going to have to win that matchup, because you're going to get the matchups that you don't want in the playoffs. You're going to have to figure out how to beat Pelech and Pullock. And you're not always going to be Dan Bilesma and play into the other team's hands the way he just put Malkin and Crosby and Kunitz together versus the Rangers in 2014. And the Rangers just said, okay, we're going to put McDonough and Girardi on them, and we'll enjoy the rest of the series. So, and you wonder why that team came back from a 3-1 deficit. So they're going to have to win that matchup. John, what's yours?
Like I said before, I'm going to watch Brock Nelson, who I think is going to be the center against Evgeny Malkin. I think that's probably the most pivotal matchup in the entire series. I know, for the sake of repeating Anthony, I didn't want to say the Pullock Pelech pairing against Sidney Crosby, because obviously that's very important as well. But I think that's the obvious one, and I think the one that might be a little more pivotal when it get down to it, because you always talk about your primary scoring and how your primary scoring has to come through in the playoffs. Your big guns have to be your big guns, but your secondary guys are the guys who are just as important come playoff time, because you don't always get the offense from your primary guns. It's the secondary ones that have to come through and give you those goals when you're not getting them from your top line guys. So I would say for both sides, it's important that Evgeny Malkin starts to score for the Penguins, but it's important that Brock Nelson and his line mates get in it, or whoever's line is against Evgeny Malkin, you get in Malkin's head and start throwing him off this game. Because once that happens, then, it's like the Titanic sinking for the Penguins. So I would say that matchup would probably be the matchup that I would watch.
So, Anthony, we're going to start with you on this. The New York Islanders will win the series if
they get their goal scoring. They're not like top heavy with scoring, but they are deep with scoring. Pajot, Nelson, Beuvillier, Barzal, Wahlstrom. They do have Palmieri, even though he's slumping. They have a lot of guys that can score. You're talking if this was an 82 game season, they probably would have had a good 6 plus 20 goal scorers. So they're deep in that regard. So if they can get all lines going and everyone contributing, Beuvillier, he's hot right now. Wahlstrom's hot right now. So if those guys keep going and Barzal catches fire, the Islanders can really, really oust Pittsburgh quickly, especially if their defense and goaltending plays the way it usually does. So I'm going to say for sure, if the Islanders can score goals and keep up their norms, they have a really, really good shot of beating Pittsburgh here.
John.
The Islanders will win the series if they take the lead in games. I've said it all year. The Islanders are a team that plays better when they have the lead. If they don't have the lead, it's a completely different game for them. Then they have to go outside of their comfort zone, and then you start to see that team exposed. So if Pittsburgh gets an early goal and the Islanders don't answer, quickly, or if Pittsburgh gets a pretty sizable lead early, then in some of these games things can look different. I will say that compared to the last time these two teams played, Pittsburgh, I think, is a better team now than they were back then. Their forward group is better with the additions of guys like Carter, McCann, and Tanev. And John Marino has really helped solidify Pittsburgh's defense. I don't trust their goaltending, but like I've said before, Pittsburgh's defense has been their MVP this year because they've been a lot better than anyone could ever give them credit for. So if the Islanders don't gain the lead on them early, it's going to be tough for them. So if the Islanders, like I said, if they gain that lead and they can play their game, they could clamp down and make this a short series for them against Pittsburgh.
For me, it's very simple. Don't play Pittsburgh hockey. Get into low-scoring games. They only have one win versus the Penguins when they have scored 3 goals or more. That was their first game of the season. So keep it low-scoring. Keep it tight. Don't let the Penguins start skating. And this is an evenly matched and interesting series. I mean, there's a reason why these teams are as good as they are. But it's the Islanders can't let Pittsburgh run wild and free. And then another thing for both teams, stay out of the box. Because I put up the numbers before for the power plays. The Islanders are at 35%, and the Penguins are at 25%. Those are unreal numbers. Don't get in the box. But that usually goes with any series versus anybody. Anthony, we'll go to you. The Islanders are in trouble if...
All the opposite. If they're not generating chances and they don't get the goal scoring, they're not, they could very well lose. Because just as you saw against Washington, they played them 3 1-0 games. Granted, they won one of them, but the last 2 they played, 1-0 in a shootout and then lost 1-0 in regulation, proves that the Islanders could still play their style of hockey, great defense, great goaltending, and still lose simply because they didn't score enough. So the Islanders could play their style of hockey all they want, but if they don't get the scoring, they could very well end up losing, 1-0 games or 2-1 games. So They need to bring that offensive pressure to Pittsburgh. They need to come at them with all four lines, and they really need all lines going, because if the Islanders have lines, they definitely lines one thing, but if they have their first line, second line, and third line all going, that's going to be a handful for Pittsburgh, because you could throw Letang out against Barzal, but then what pairs are going to handle a line with Beuvillier, who's really fast, and Nelson, who's got a great shot, and then even the third line, Pajot moves around like a water bug, and then you have Oliver Wahlstrom teeing off on that line. So, and again, Kyle Palmieri if he gets going. So if the Islanders get going, Pittsburgh's going to have a hard time containing all three of those lines. But if they don't get those chances, they could be in some trouble.
John, you ready?
Yeah, I would say if Evgeny Malkin gets going, I think that's going to be a problem, because Pittsburgh's going to have three lines that can absolutely light it up at that point, because obviously Carter's line has been really good. It's been that third line that Pittsburgh has needed for a while now, probably since the HBK line was there in 2016. But if Evgeny Malkin gets going, his line's going, Sidney Crosby is going to bring it every night. I mean, if Pelech and Pullock are good and they shut him down, Pittsburgh still has two lines at that point that can really put up, and then a fourth line that can bring them some energy, maybe a goal here or there. But if Evgeny Malkin's line is going and they're on fire and they're having their way with Brock Nelson or whoever's line is going after them, then that's a big problem, because it becomes a matchup nightmare for the Islanders. So I would say if Evgeny Malkin's line gets going, it's going to be trouble for the Islanders.
I'm actually going to go in a different direction than what people might think on this, and that's Islanders got to win a road game. They winless against the Penguins in this series in Pittsburgh. That's not a good thing. And if you can't win at home, all Pittsburgh needs to do is win one game, and they're going to win this series. And the games in Pittsburgh really weren't that close. Just licking them all off. And they're, again, the Islanders are a good team. They're coached well. They got plenty of talent. They're going to win the center matchups. Pittsburgh's one of those teams that can really fight back with their center matchups. So, it's going to come down to maybe even Pittsburgh's fourth line trying to make a difference in the series. But I think it's got to be, they got to figure out how to just win one game in Pittsburgh. That's all they got to do. So we're going to our predictions, guys. Anthony, what do you got?
Islanders in 6. Again, I think the Islanders, as we established, I think they got the edge in goal with Varlarmov or Sorokin. They got the edge in their defense. They do have that slight edge in coaching. So that comes down to the forwards. And, the Islanders have guys that can score, as I mentioned. So as long as the Islanders play their style of hockey and they get the scoring, I think Pittsburgh is going to have a hard time with the Islanders' depth. And, I'm going to throw a little bit of a, take here. Mark, you just mentioned the Islanders need to win one game on the road, but I think in order for Pittsburgh to win the series, I think they have to take the first two in Pittsburgh, because even though the Coliseum's not going to be full, Cuomo announced that the Islanders are going to have 50% capacity. They split and they go back to the Coliseum for games 3 and 4. The last run at the barn, even with only 6,500 fans there, Pittsburgh is going to have a really tough time playing in that atmosphere. Again, even with half a building, that arena is going to be jammed and they're going to be fired up, ready to go. As it proved before in previous playoff runs, that gives the Islanders a lot of extra juice. But overall, again, Pittsburgh's a very good team, and yeah, they could very well easily win the series. But I do think the Islanders are going to take care of them again. Not in 4 games as they did in 18-19, but I think they have all the tools in place here to beat Pittsburgh.
Filk?
I'm with Anthony on it. Islanders in 6. I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a tough series. I think these are going to be very closely battled and contested games. I don't think you're going to see blowouts or anything like that. I think these games are going to be very, very close. You're going to see contests decided by 1 or 2 goals at most. I think it's going to be a very high-paced, hard-hitting series. It's going to be a tough, tightly contested one. So I just think that goaltending wins And I think the defense is also in favor of the Islanders. I think the coaching is in favor of the Islanders as well. Center depth, I would say, favors Pittsburgh, but the Islanders' speed is going to be something that Pittsburgh is going to have to deal with, and they're one of the fastest skating teams in the league. They're a tough team that just comes at you in waves, and I would say that the Islanders have the advantage there. So I'm taking Islanders in 6, but I mean, if Pittsburgh somehow ends up winning the series, I wouldn't be too shocked about that either. So, but I'm going to say Islanders in 6.
There's a ton of permutations that can come from this. The only thing that would shock me in this series if either team swept. That being said, my prediction, after looking at all the stats and all the games, I got to go Penguins in 5. And it's a little bit of a shocker because I know it sounds like a diss to the Islanders, but I think it's going to be more akin to the Rangers-Penguins series in 2015 that had a 1-goal margin of victory every single game for the Rangers. There was 2 overtime wins. Yeah, it was a hard-fought, tough series. And the one game the Penguins won was when it got completely offensive and Pittsburgh just ran the Rangers out of MSG. Why I'm bringing that in right now is each team, if they play their game, it's going to be dangerous. And I think Pittsburgh's game is built to attack the Barry Trotz system and the Islanders. Look for Brian Rust to have a good series. He had a great regular season against the Islanders, including a hat trick in the game. I think it was in March. And this is going to be a great series to watch as it moves on. But I'm going Pittsburgh in 5. So, yeah, that is our humongous Islanders preview. Humongous big. So, what do you think about it? Are we all based on anything? Is it mostly me? I know you want to say it's me. So, put it all in the comments below. You can also comment right now. And feel free to make your own predictions in the comments. Leave us a like. Did you like that video? Of course you did. So, why not check out some more of our content? You can check the playlist right here or right here.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.